you Sinekin. Don't think that I'm not.
On a Monday afternoon. Dave Sinekin in for the Common Man today. With you till 3 o'clock. Alec Lewis joins at 3 and will host the Bumper to Bumper program for 1 hour. Vikings Rewind follows at 4 o'clock. Then the World Juniors, USA versus Slovakia on the Fan with Zach Halverson on the call. That's at 5 o'clock. We'll have first half or so of Monday Night Football, Rams Falcons, and then Wild against the Vegas Golden Knights at 9 o'clock. And we will chat maybe a little next segment about the Wolves and Wild in action tonight. I want to continue our NFL conversation and what we saw in Week 17 and what looks like the big matchups for Week 18. We know the final game on the docket will be the AFC North battle between the Ravens and Steelers. All Pittsburgh had to do was go into Cleveland and win, and they would have won the AFC North, but that didn't happen. They fell to Cleveland 13-6. Aaron Rodgers did not get sacked by Myles Garrett, so the sack record is still in play. It's funny how the Browns complained afterwards that they cared more about preventing Myles from getting the record than winning the football game. Well, basically, Cleveland has one player. So if you don't think they're going to focus on just making sure that Garrett doesn't wreck the game, that seemed a little sour grapey to me. But bottom line is that paves the way for one of the great rivalries of the last 20 years, Steelers-Ravens, in what could be Aaron Rodgers' final game. I think a lot of us would love to see Baltimore go into Pittsburgh and end things once and for all. I don't really see a scenario where Aaron Rodgers comes back next season. Do you, Brett? Unless
I think he's done.
Unless the Vikings come calling and say, we thought about it. We ended up going another direction, but, JJ loves you, and we'd love to have you for, a swan song. But no, I think he's done.
I think once we saw him injured with his hand and his broken nose all bandaged on the sideline in the freezing cold, after I saw that picture, I'm like, he's got to be done. And he said it's probably going to be it, but after that, I would be stunned if he came back.
Yeah, I would as well. Think about this. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a chance to reach the playoffs. Yet, in the last 5 games, they've played against a team that is 8 or more games under 500. They're 0-4-1. That ties for the longest streak in NFL history. And that's a team that might be in the postseason. I mean, it's one thing to not get up for bad teams, but to go 0-4-1 against teams that are at least 8 games below 500. That's the dregs of the league. That is the Browns. I didn't look at the teams that comprises necessarily, but that's not a team that is going to do anything in the postseason.
You shouldn't have to look it up.
No, I really shouldn't.
Yeah.
Whereas, whoever's going to be the 5 seed in the AFC, whether it's the Chargers or the Texans, I think most likely, top of my head, if they have the choice of going into Pittsburgh or going into Baltimore for their wild card round, no one's raising their hand and saying, I'll go into Baltimore, right? Now, Green Bay certainly made Baltimore look a little better than they are on Saturday night because they have not looked good. They blew a game the week before to New England. Kudos to them. They were 1-5, and they're on the doorstep of the playoffs. But Aaron Rodgers, you know who his top 2 receivers were he was thrown to yesterday? MVS and Adam Thielen. Those were, no offense to those guys, but this is a team fighting for a division championship, and their top 2 wide receivers on the depth chart are Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Adam Thielen.
Like trying to win an NFC North in 2018.
It's about it.
Basically.
Yeah, if we could move back the clock, and even still, I mean, MVS has always been kind of a borderline NFL player. But that'll be a great scene at, what is it now, Assurance Field in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. It's always Heinz. It's always the big ketchup bottle to me. Baltimore is a 3-point favorite at Pittsburgh. And if you know anything about betting on the NFL, one of the great sayings is when Pittsburgh and Baltimore meet, you take the underdog, and you just don't even think about it. No one's going to back the Steelers, right? Everyone that bets on football is going to be on Baltimore for this game. And when Mike Tomlin's in that spot where no one believes in his team, he always figures out a way. So I'm not going to just assume that Baltimore is going to go into Pittsburgh and take care of business. I think the Steelers beat them early in the season. And again, these teams tend to split more often than not. But I'm not one that just believes Baltimore is going to roll in on Sunday night and be coronated just because they look great against Green Bay.
We talked about cliches and old sayings, and we have a handful of them on the text line that were good earlier.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of those.
I think this is you can use this anytime you want. When these two teams get together, you can throw the record book out the window. And it's just one of those rivalries where it just feels like you never know what's going to happen.
I mean, that's a great cliche, but it's not necessarily a saying I live by. Like, I don't, wake up in the morning with that to get me going. But you're right. That is a great NFL cliche. There's no question about that. The other was several really big games this week. We haven't talked about the Saturday night primetime game, which will determine the number one seed to the NFC, Seattle and San Francisco. Short week. I don't know why they play Saturday games the final week of this. I do know why, obviously. It's for money. It's for TV money on Saturday night. I get it. There's nothing else. There's not going to be any college football on Saturday. So why wouldn't the NFL take that stage? But it just doesn't seem really fair. As it turned out, Seattle played yesterday, correct? Yes, Seattle played yesterday. The Niners played yesterday. So nobody has extra rest, but it is a short week. And for the Niners, it'll be their third game in 13 days. So maybe a little bit for them feeling it. I'm sure would have loved to have had that extra day to play on Sunday. But there's a game to determine the NFC's top seed. The Seattle Seahawks, who have really ridden a great defense, and Sam Darnold has kind of come down to earth in the last 3 or 4 weeks. But he accomplished something that's never been done in the National Football League. He's the first quarterback to lead his team to 13-plus win seasons back-to-back for two different teams. Again, we talk about, if you would have told me, imagine telling somebody 2 years ago that Darnold would hold that record, right? Again, do you know football at all?
The guy from the Jets?
Yeah. Jets / the guy that saw Ghost / the guy who went to Carolina and San Francisco and couldn't get on the field. That guy is going to win 13 games for two different teams back-to-back. Okay. But, I mean, it's pretty impressive if you think about it, because O'Connell gets a lot of the credit, maybe more so than Darnold, maybe last year, for what happened here. A great system, great coaching. Look what Darnold can become. Well, he goes to Seattle. They don't have a great offensive coaching staff. They just hired a new coordinator. They don't, yes, JSN has blossomed into a top 5 receiver, but their passing attack is beyond him is nothing. Their running game is so-so. That's a team that's got a really good defense, and that's going to get you some wins for sure. But Sam has looked a little bit closer to the guy that finished down the stretch in Minnesota the last few weeks. Even yesterday, I mean, if you didn't watch the game, 27-10, they blew out the Panthers on the road. I don't think any team's been better on the road than Seattle. They're certainly one of the best. But I'm pretty sure that game was 3-3 at halftime. Like, they got nothing done in that first half. You're looking at me like I'm speaking Japanese all of a sudden.
Well, I just made a startling discovery as we're approaching late for a break, but have you seen the spread for the border battle?
6.5 Vikings? Why are you surprised by that?
I mean, I know Green Bay was terrible, but...
Well, Green Bay's not going to play anybody.
I get that.
That's what that's all about.
I don't know.
It has nothing to do with,
Malik could play.
Might have something to do with
He's been
Baltimore.
okay.
I know, but I don't know that Green Bay is going to play most of their offensive linemen or Jacobs or Watson or Dobbs. Oh, my. No, I'm not at all surprised by that. I don't expect this game to be very competitive. Maybe I'll be surprised.
I don't know. I thought it'd be more closer just a toss-up of whoever's backups can be. I mean, we're all unknowns at this point. Unless JJ's playing, which he may.
He may, as Kevin O'Connell just said in his press conference. When you're looking at the last couple weeks of the season, motivation is what you look at number one. And we talked about it going into the Saturday game between the Ravens and Packers. The Ravens season was on the line. Like, they lose, they're dead. Mm-hmm. Green Bay had already had their ticket punched 2 days ago. And that's just, there's this natural letdown. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, we can lose. Yeah, sure, we'd love to get the 2 or 3 seed and win the North. We'd like to think that means a lot to these guys, but I think naturally guys let up. And same thing on Sunday. Green Bay is going to roll in here just trying not to get hurt. Just, they lost 5 more players for the season Saturday night. I mean, it's just crazy. So, no, I'm not saying it's going to be a bloodbath because I think whoever plays for Green Bay, they'll have some capable guys out there. You can't bench your entire – there's not enough players. You can't bench all your starters. But no, I'm not at all surprised the Vikings are near touchdown favorites. It feels to me, as we sit here on Monday, like a 17-10 game. Vikings. Like, just not a lot of offense. I think Green Bay's defense will try to rebound a little bit. And obviously, the Vikings offense, I don't care who quarterbacks the team, with the state of the offensive line, it's not going to scare anybody. So I think points are going to be at a premium on Sunday.
With how the offense played last week, where Brosmer was negative passing yards for, but then again, we just mentioned that they don't even need to pass. They can just run against the Green Bay D. I don't know. I was just a little startled by it. I didn't see the line until just now. But you're making a lot of, nothing you're saying is wrong. Yeah,
but
I was just like, whoa.
Right now, if you want the Packers and the points, I'll bank that for you. Just come to Papa. I'll take it. Let's pause
There's
here.
a PA bit somewhere about
I'm sure there is. By the way, I'm a little bitter. I should have gone 3-0 with my underdog picks, and a late meaningless field goal cost me my 3-0. I'll tell you about that when we come back. And let's preview briefly the Wild and Wolves games tonight before we welcome Britt Robson at about 1:35 to chat all things Wolves after a demoralizing, embarrassing, almost as bad as the Packers performance by the Wolves on Saturday night against Brooklyn. That's all coming up. It's the Common Man Program on the Fan.
Teachers go above and beyond. Now it's your turn. You can nominate your favorite teacher for Thank a Teacher, powered by Donors Choose. They can win $5,000 for classroom supplies. Enter now iHeartRadio.com/teachers. iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
By the way, Mr. Blakemore, let me know if you want live updates on the GLAB Birmingham Bowl, which is now being played. I'm going to guess it's in Birmingham, Alabama, between Georgia Southern and Appalachian State. Georgia Southern has a 7-0 lead. Somebody just mentioned there's a bowl game on now. I had no idea. I don't even know if the Gophers won at this point. And
You're just locked in on the Rose Bowl.
I'm so locked in on the college football playoffs. But the Gopher game was entertaining. It was the rare bowl game now where you had two teams that actually had most of their players playing. You know, coaching staffs that care about it. Obviously, PJ's now unbeaten at 7-0. And Jason Eck, the first-year coach of New Mexico, turned that program around from a 3-win operation. And they cared. And it showed. It was an entertaining game. It was a game that... the Gophers lead 14-6, take the lead to go up 8, and they immediately let a kickoff return go for a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, and now it's tied. And now we're going to overtime. And, is it Jalen Smith, the wide receiver, who scored both touchdowns? Both were beautiful catches. The second one spectacular to win that game in overtime. It's very fashionable to go, these games mean nothing. And for the most part, it's true because if you're not playing in the college football playoff, most of your either draft-eligible players or soon-to-be transferring players are not going to play in the games. And so most of these games are not watchable. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say the JLAB Birmingham Bowl is going to be an unwatchable game. Now, maybe these are two teams that do care, and their players aren't leaving, and it's going to be competitive. But, yeah, I just switched it from ESPN2, which I didn't realize I was on, to ESPN because football. It's a game.
Exactly.
And I'm sitting here until 3 o'clock. So,
meanwhile, I'm watching the World Juniors from Grand Casino Arena right now. Sweden's put it on Germany.
Are they?
Over in St. Paul.
What network is carrying that?
NHL Network.
Oh, very good.
Which you were flabbergasted a couple weeks ago. You didn't even know existed.
I was surprised there was an NHL network. It's a regional network, correct? Is it just like for the Midwest and the Northeast?
You can get it on most cable services.
Can you now?
Yeah.
They probably
You probably have it on yours.
Well, I'm sure I do. They probably pay you to include it so they can just add the subscription list and make it a more august list. I kid. Speaking of the NHL, your Wild are back in action tonight in Las Vegas to take on the Golden Knights, fresh off a thrilling overtime win over the Winnipeg Jets. We chatted a bit about that over the weekend. That was, it gave you a little something to feel good about after watching your favorite football team on Saturday night. But give us an update on your favorite squad as they head down to Sin City tonight.
That was a very good consolation prize. No, they're playing well. I did read from LaPanta, the play-by-play Vox.
I'm aware who
on
Anthony LaPanta
FanDuel
is.
Sports North.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to talk down to you after the first hour.
Fair enough. What's a power play again? That's
exactly.
hockey, right?
That is hockey. There's a penalty box, hooking, slashing.
Really?
LaPanta said it looks like Urov is getting moved back up to the top line to play with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. 2 thumbs up from the producer on that one.
Okay.
But I like the way that they're playing. The win in Winnipeg was just such a rousing. It was the exact opposite of what we saw with our football. It was a rousing. It got you up. Just a stupid penalty from Winnipeg, just cross-checking Eric's neck. Nowhere near, not even the same zip code. I mean, he was in Alberta from the puck. And they get the power play. Quinn Hughes gets the assist. Zuccarello gets the goal to tie it with like 20-some seconds left. And then tic-tac-toe, Kaprizov to Hughes to Boldy for the winner. I mean, that's what you envisioned when you trade for a guy like Hughes. He's a point a game since he's been on the Wild. He plays like damn near half the game. I think it's like 27 minutes of ice time per game. So I love the way they're playing. I love the way they're rolling.
I'm still on tic-tac-toe. Is that a hockey thing? I like that. I've never heard that before.
You've never heard?
No.
Yeah, a little 3 passing play. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun time.
Can we use that in basketball?
That's more the triangle offense, I think.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
I like the tic-tac-toe.
Yeah.
All right, so Wild v. the Golden Knights tonight, 9 o'clock. You'll hear it on the Fan. If you want to listen to the Timberwolves, you can do that too on the free iHeartRadio app. Just find the Timberwolves channel, and you will hear Wolves and Bulls as Minnesota heads out on a 3-game road trip. They'll close out the calendar year in Chicago tonight and at Atlanta on New Year's Eve day. It's, I think, a 2 o'clock start. And I caught the very end of PA's show. I was sitting next to Nordo, and he was talking about, Kobe White for the Bulls as a point guard who, a lot of Wolves fans are kind of rubbing their hands thinking, oh, would that be a nice solution to the point guard problem? The problem is he's a free agent after the season. He wants to get paid. I don't know he's a likely trade partner because it would be a rental player unless you knew you could sign him long term. And I don't know that they have the money or the interest to do that. But that's the kind of player, if they are looking to upgrade a point guard, I would love to see them get. And if you don't see Kobe White play a lot, because why would you watch the Bulls play? Tonight's game, which you can also watch on the FanDuel Sports Network, will give you a look at him and Josh Giddey, a really talented backcourt. And we'll see if the Wolves defense can improve at least one notch over what they showed against Brooklyn, which was horrendous, and allowed them to do whatever they wanted. 66 points in the paint, 46 points in the paint in the first half. Just a miserable effort. For me, watching that effort and the Packers' effort in the same night was just a double gut punch. It was ugly. Speaking of point guards, the Wolves will head to Atlanta on Wednesday to face the Hawks, who just today I saw some reports that they are now open to looking at dealing Trae Young. Now you have my attention, and you've got Trent Tucker's attention, because that's the guy Trent's been thinking about for a couple of years for this team. He just dreams about an Trae Young backcourt. People don't maybe see a lot of Trae Young. He led the league in assists a couple of years ago. He would be, to me, an ideal backcourt partner to Anthony Edwards. And although Anthony's been pretty much unlocked already offensively, that would do even more to take those ball handling responsibilities away from Anthony Edwards. And there is some, worry with Trae Young. He's not been a winner. He's been injury prone. Not sure how great a leader he is, but I don't know in this environment how great of a leader he would have to be. And I don't know what you'd have to give up for Trae Young. And I haven't looked at his contract situation. He makes a lot of money. You're going to have to give up, whether it's, Randall, Reed, McDaniels, one of those guys. And I don't want it to be Jaden, but salary has to follow salary. They got to match or be close. So that's still pipe dream stuff. But if you are dreaming about a point guard, the Wolves' next 2 opponents both have point guards that are likely going to be in different places next season. This is a big couple games for Minnesota, just because the way the last 2 games went. They beat the Knicks earlier last week. They're sitting there at, I think, 20-10, and, feeling really good about taking down the Knicks, even though they didn't have Jalen Brunson. The Wolves didn't have Jaden. Beating the Thunder, not that, a couple days earlier. Things were looking really good. And then there's no harm or, shame in losing at Denver. That's a really good team. But, man, you go up 9 points to start overtime. You'd like to think you can hang on there. And Jokic did what Jokic does and took over that game. But then they followed it up with just such a putrid home performance that you just saw coming from a mile away. Brooklyn has a terrible record. It's not going to get the Wolves' attention. But they've been the best defensive team in the league in December. They've been winning games in December. They've seemed to have figured things out. And the Wolves didn't take them seriously. And that's been a problem for this team for a long, long time. And yes, they beat up on a lot of those teams early in the season, but they're starting to fall back into some old bad habits. And taking care of the Bulls and Hawks on the road to close out the calendar year, I think would be really important as they look ahead to what they face ahead of them in the Western Conference. Let's chat more Wolves. Let's bring in one of my favorite chroniclers of the Timberwolves, Britt Robson, who's long time covered this team for various outlets, currently writing for MinPost.com. Britt joins us next to talk Wolves and all things NBA on the Common Man program on The Fan.
Join the Fan's Corey Cove tonight. Willie McCoy's Ramsey. Coors Light Hockey Night. Drive-by starting at 7 p.m. to catch Minnesota take on Vegas. Enjoy ice-cold Coors Light specials. Play trivia for your chance to win great prizes, including sweet tickets to a game in January. Full details now. KFAN.com. Keyword count.
All right, we're back. 1:37 on a Monday afternoon. Dave Sinekin in for the Common Man on this Monday. About halfway through, Alec Lewis takes over at 3 for a truncated 1-hour version of the Bumper to Bumper show before we go to Vikings Rewind, then USA versus Slovakia, World Juniors on the Fan at 5 o'clock, Wild Hockey later tonight at 9. With all that hockey coming up, it feels like we need to talk some hoops, which I love to do, and I always love to chat with our next guest, Britt Robson, kind enough to join us. He covers the Wolves now for MinPost.com. Happy holidays, early Happy New Year, Britt. Glad to have you on today.
Yeah, same to you.
So the last we watched the Timberwolves, fortunately for me, I saw very little of it because I watched my other favorite team completely implode at Lambeau Field. Wasn't much better at Target Center. I refuse to be surprised by what this team puts on the floor night after night because you never really know what you're going to get. But in light of they were coming off a really tough, long overtime game in Denver, do you give them a pass at all for stumbling, or are you just disgusted by the effort you saw against the Brooklyn Nets on Saturday night?
I'm somewhere in between. I'm not disgusted because it's a long season. They're 20-12. They're 10-5 in their last 15. They have played a lackluster schedule for the first 2/3 of that, but their schedule has been about the same in terms of one-loss record going against much tougher competition. They still have a tendency to overestimate themselves, I think, even more than underestimating the opposition. I just think that if you throw out that wild Christmas night game against Denver, which for some reason when they go to Ball Arena in Denver, there's crazy games that happen there, whether it's Game 7 or, anyway, there's just been a lot going on there. But the last 3 that they played that they've lost have been at home, against Phoenix, Memphis, and Brooklyn. And what those 3 teams have in common is they really get after you on defense. They were playing well coming into that game, and they don't have any stars. They play a very team-oriented style of play. Triple J for Memphis and Booker for Phoenix, I guess, could be regarded as stars. But the way that they're coached and the way they approach the game, all 3 of those teams, they share the ball, they're very disciplined, and they put a lot of pressure on you. And the Wolves weren't prepared, really, mentally, to play any one of those 3 teams. And so disgusted is probably too harsh of a word because, every NBA team mails in games on occasion, and it's a long season, and sometimes they play really well and lose. Sometimes they play really badly and win. But one of the things I have noticed about this Wolves team is that they think they can come back and beat anybody, and one of the reasons they think that is because they've come back a lot. They've come back in the fourth quarter. They had the best fourth quarter defense by a country mile over the previous 10 or 12 games heading into these last couple. And so they think that they're going to be able to roar back. They overestimate themselves. Is this the mark of a veteran team that fronts its continuity as a virtue. No, it's not. And that is something that Chris Finch and Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle and the rest of the team that is really kind of guiding the force and identity of this franchise, they're going to have to address it, because it won't pass muster once they start to get into the crucible of, early spring games and then the playoffs.
What is the biggest issue for you for this team right now? Because the defense, when Rudy's not on the floor, is atrocious. The point guard play is a rumor oftentimes, although Mike Conley has certainly shown flashes of looking like 33-year-old Mike Conley of late, but he can't do that night after night. If there was one thing you'd like to cure more than anything else for this team right now, what would it be?
Quite frankly, it would be attitude. It would be the idea that they took everybody seriously. They walk their talk. I mean, what makes this so annoying? I'm much more annoyed than I am disgusted.
I like that.
Disgusted means, you're finished with these guys. And, having covered the team for 30 odd years, I'm never going to be finished with this team. But I am very much annoyed with their personality. I'm annoyed with the idea that, they look at a Brooklyn Nets team that had gone 7-3 in their previous 10. The Wolves had gone 6-4, and they clearly underestimated this team. Brooklyn got 46 points in the paint in the first half against them. I mean, that's a 92 point in the paint pace. And they battened down in the second half, and they only gave up 20, but it was too late by then. And by the way, by then Brooklyn had been, a bunch of frisky kids learning how to play. The opposite of the Wolves' attitude, they're just dying to get on the court and play as a team and do exactly what their good young coach is telling them to do. And they outscore the Wolves by like almost 20 points in the second half. So even with the getting only 20 points in the paint. So that's an attitude thing. The Memphis game was an attitude thing. The Phoenix game was an attitude thing. On the flip side, beating Oklahoma City was an attitude thing. Beating the Knicks, albeit shorthanded with OG Anunoby and Brunson both out, but that was an attitude game. When they lock in, they're a very good basketball team, and they're obviously a very talented basketball team. Now, when you talk about point guard, I would agree that some of this attitude and poise or whatever, Conley, when he was the unquestioned alpha playmaker on the team, clearly was able to set that tone in terms of attitude and composure a lot better than anybody else right now. But I would also say that, their titular starting point guard, Dante DiVincenzo, 71 assists and 16 turnovers in the last 15 games. That's pretty good point guard play from that slot. The problem is that they run most of their offense through two shot-centric, ISO-heavy players who also are expected to be playmakers in Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards. And that can expose things in the offense. I mean, Ant right now, in the last 15 games in which the team has gone 10-5, they've been outscored by 22 points when Ant's been on the floor. Their overall net on that is plus 39, so they have outscored opposition by 61 points when Ant is on the bench. Jaden McDaniels and Ant have played about the exact same number of minutes over those 15 games. It might surprise you to think that Jaden McDaniels has one fewer assists than Ant in that period of time, in 3 less minutes played and 18 fewer turnovers. So Jaden McDaniels could arguably be a much better playmaker in that stretch of time than Anthony Edwards. And yet Anthony Edwards, we know, because he's encountering double teams, and part of their system is to bring the double against Julius and Ant and have Ant and Julius capably play out of that. And that's one of the reasons the Wolves offense can hum on occasion. So, yeah, a point guard would be nice, but then it gets down to, if you're going to get a quality point guard, what are you giving up?
Right. Yeah. And you're obviously going to have to give up something if you're looking to bring in a real player that's going to make a difference. We're talking with Britt Robson. He covers the Wolves at minpost.com. You mentioned the points in the paint that the Wolves gave up to the Nets on Saturday night. They also got, I think, doubled up in bench production by the Brooklyn Nets. I think that's been one of the more head-scratching and surprising things for me for this team through 30 games or so, Britt, is the lack of production, the lack of consistency from the bench and some of the players. Finchie's kind of been all over the board. It seems like he's been very adamant about trying to loosen up that rotation to see 9, 10, 11 guys who he's got. We know come April and May, that rotation is going to be a tight 8-man rotation. I don't know right now. He knows who those 8 guys are going to be. But where are you with how the bench has played? And I guess for me, I can't get enough Jalen Clark, and I've been a little surprised at his lack of minutes of late. So where do you stand on the guys on the bench? And if you're looking at an 8-man rotation as this team is currently constructed come playoff time, who are the 8 guys you trust?
Well, unfortunately, it won't be Terrence Shannon Jr., who was going to be. I mean, everybody knows the story here. They do have an iron 7, and they had an iron 8 last year, and the 7th or 8th man, depending on how you want to calibrate it, was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who they had to let go for salary reasons if they wanted to re-sign Naz Reid, and they did, and also re-up Julius Randle, and they missed Nah because he was a glue guy in many ways. He could be a quasi-point guard. He could be a quasi-combo guard. He was a great defender, on-ball defender, also really good in switch zone types, could break through screens really well. They thought that Terrence Shannon would take up the majority of what Nah did on the court, that he could be somewhat of a playmaker, somewhat of a good defender, and also be the kind of guy who could get to the rim off the bounce and hit the occasional 3 the way Nah did. That has failed spectacularly thus far. Shannon's had a welter of minor injuries, but that does not explain the almost comical net rating that he has. I mean, it's the kind of it's over and minus net 20. Wow. It's the kind of thing that people usually rack up when they've played a very small amount of minutes, and his minutes have begun to mount. And he's one of the worst offensive players on the team, and one of the worst defensive players on the team statistically. The eye test isn't that much better. This is a guy who, obviously showed out a couple of games of the playoffs, especially a memorable performance against OKC, had a fantastic summer league, had a fantastic preseason, and almost actually played pretty well in the home opener. The season opener in Portland. And then after that, it just has been very, very few spotty games. And you can tell by the way that the team keeps on trying to jam him back in at the first sign of a resuscitation that they want him to succeed and fill that role. And he just has not been able to do it. So what you've got, Jalen Clark was fantastic on defense for a while. Lately, I know you didn't see the Brooklyn game. Cam Thomas beat him for 2 and 1s in the single quarter of play, which is just you didn't see. I think they may have been the first 2 we've seen Jalen Clark give up. His defense has slipped a little bit. I don't know if that has something to do with his irregular minutes, but his performance and efficacy lately has not been great. And then, the third guy of what Finch called the youth core, Rob Dillingham, shows flashes, has a great first step, has a good shot. His skill set and what Finch wants out of the position are not a good match. He's been supplanted in the rotation by Bones Highland, who, although he's kicked around quite a bit, is not that old. He's 25 years old. He's 2 weeks older than Jaden McDaniels, and is getting minutes off the bench. And contrary to my curmudgeonly take on him early, has proved me wrong by playing very well off the bench and actually being somewhat of an elixir in terms of somebody who can move the ball along and make some playmaking happen. His defense is statistically really good, but the eye test shows it to be pretty spotty. But he has supplanted any of the 3 young core and now sits alongside Naz Reid and Mike Conley as the 8 players that I would guess Finch would go with if the playoffs will start tomorrow.
Yeah, that is a surprise for sure. I've kind of admired in bad things after the last couple of games. There have been some positives, as you said. They're 20 and 12. What to you maybe has been the most pleasant surprise, or maybe one of the most positive developments for this team that maybe you didn't necessarily expect when the season started?
I actually think that their offensive capability when they play the right way, their ball movement, which has enabled Jaden McDaniels to play extremely well. I guess I would say, if you're asking me to signal out a person, McDaniels getting the room to show his versatility has been fantastic, and that's kind of been one of the problems lately with this kind of double ISO ball with Randall and Ant. It doesn't give McDaniels as much of a chance. I'd like to see him get a little bit more second unit minutes where he's one of the primary playmakers on the floor. And then I would say that after a fits and stops start, Rudy Gobert has been fantastic over the last dozen games or so. His rebounding has really solidified the team's defense, especially in the second half of games. He still remains somebody who runs very hot and cold on offense, depending on whether or not he gets a couple of easy looks and they look to get him off and get scoring and get comfortable. He seems very much to be a headset-oriented player in terms of if he feels like he's being fed and being paid attention to early, he gets a lot more of his game going. But his defense has remained rock solid. As you mentioned, one of the problems, of course, has been how completely they fall apart on defense when he's off the floor. But he remains a stalwart, and it's easy to underestimate him because defense is a vague thing, and you never really know who's at fault and who's to credit. A lot of times in the NBA, he does a lot of what they call never minds, when people try to drive to the rim and then move out of it, and they've been moving him around on defense a little bit more, not strictly drop coverage, and he's been effective there and still getting rebounds. He's always great on screen assists. He is fantastic at freeing out people that way. So I would say Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels individually have been the pleasant surprises, and I would say the Wolves' capacity, I believe, to be a top five offense when the ball is moving, when Ant and Randall are playing the right way, and when this team decides it wants to lock in mentally. Those are all things that are good things to look forward to as the season goes on.
Want to move off the Wolves for our last minute or two together. It wasn't that long ago, a couple weeks, we were talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder looking like a team that might break the Warriors' record for most wins in the regular season. Then the San Antonio Spurs came along and knocked them off not once but twice last week. First doing it at home and then going to OKC on Christmas Day and dominating them again. The rise of the Spurs, we looked at the heading into the season, the Thunder, the Rockets, and the Nuggets are the teams we got to make sure we take care of. The Spurs are ahead of schedule. I'm curious how impressed you are watching this team that has been doing it without really a fully healthy Victor Wembanyama, who until I think last night maybe is coming off the bench. What do you see when you watch the Spurs play? And are they going to own this league? Is it going to be the Thunder and Spurs and the rest is you're on your own at this point?
Well, it's kind of comical. I considered myself a wise man at the beginning of the year when people, I was on a podcast and somebody was saying, what's your, out-of-the-box prediction this year? And my out-of-the-box prediction was that the San Antonio Spurs would avoid the play-in and be one of the top six teams in the Western Conference. And that was considered a really bold prediction. And I was kind of really proud of myself. And now here we're arguing about whether or not they'll be the top seed or not, or the eventual NBA champion or not. They clearly are way ahead of schedule. They have a template that is looking to me to be a template for overachievement in the NBA, which is that you get a young team and a young coach, and they get drilled into a certain way of playing. They eagerly adopt that system. They play unselfishly. There's no star system. You have people like Wemby and Fox, obviously, who are the stars, but their last two draft picks that they've hit on, actually, if you count Wemby, their last three draft picks that they've hit on, but Castle and Harper have both been fantastic two-way guards, guys who can play, make, and defend at a really high level. They got a veteran, over from Dallas a long time ago, Harrison Barnes, who fits in perfectly as kind of a fifth cog. That's just a team that is more than the sum of its parts, like OKC. And one of the things we've learned about OKC is size bothers them. Wemby, the Wolves have played the Thunder tough twice this season. OKC is 0-3 now against San Antonio. So that's 4 of their 5 losses this season have come to teams that have, big front courts, mobile front courts. And so, I do think that for the foreseeable future, you never want to get too permanent your predictions in the NBA because things can rapidly change. We could be a year ago, I'm sure we were praising the Celtics to high heaven as a potential dynasty or something. But right now, I would have to say that the Thunder and the Spurs are definitely ahead of schedule. Not only that, they have youth on their side, and they have draft capital on their side. They have really capable front offices in Sam Presti and R.L. Burnett, I believe it is, in San Antonio. They have good young coaches, and the Wolves are going to have to do something if they think they're going to be running along those two teams in the next 5 years.
Chicago and Atlanta to close out the calendar year. They're just December games in a long season, but these feel really important in light of what's gone down the last couple of games. Do you agree?
Well, certainly the Bulls game is a template. It's a team that is playing well recently, that with the possible exception of Josh Giddey, which I wouldn't really place as a star caliber player. Vucevic has always been a one-dimensional player. But they have a lot of frisky young guys who are listening to their coach lately, and they present exactly the kind of challenge that Brooklyn and Memphis and Phoenix had presented previously. So I'm kind of curious to see how the Wolves respond after 3 losses to that type of team. As for the Hawks, it seems it's a weird thing to say, and probably bad news for Rob Dillingham, whose comp is probably Trae Young as much as anybody in the league. But when the Hawks have Trae Young, they don't play well, and when they do have Trae Young, they don't play well. Yeah. And when they don't, they do. And Trae Young is healthy, and I'm not sure that's good news for the Hawks. I think the Bulls game is important. Obviously, if they lose to the Bulls, Atlanta, Miami, Washington, all on the road, have different levels of expertise. But as you started out this conversation saying, you never know what you're going to get when these Wolves hit the court.
They keep you guessing. I guess that's one of the positive things you could say. Brett, it's always a blast chatting with you. Keep up the great work at minpost.com. We'll continue to read you, and I'll look forward to having you on next time I'm sitting in one of these chairs. Thanks, my man.
Sure, sounds good.
Happy New Year. Britt Robson, kind enough to spend some time with us. And if you've never read his stuff, man, he has a way with words, unlike many. We're very, very fortunate between him and Krasinski and Hine and Frederick, my. There's so many great guys covering that basketball team, and Britt does a great job. We'll pause here, top of the hour, 2 hours down, 1 hour to go. We'll resume the NFL conversation for the 2 o'clock hour. Sinekin and Blakemore in for Common on a Monday on The Fan.